It's 5:30 now, so let's go ahead and get this meeting started. Commissioner Bachman is ill tonight, so I will be filling in. Let's see. The first item is report of the chair and vice chair, and I don't have any report to give, so we will move on to the report of the director.
Sorry, I just took a bite. Thank you. Not a lot to update the commission on. Last week at City Council, they had a number of work session items on planning-related proposals, including the landscaping changes for the Waterwise rebates, which there's also a couple of bills up at the legislature right now that actually change those requirements. So hopefully we can just monitor that and get those all taken care of at once. And they also had a briefing on a couple of zoning amendments, map amendments that you've seen in the last several months. And then they had a long briefing, I should say, on the proposed ADU changes. You may have seen an article in the newspaper about that a day or two ago. So those are all scheduled for public hearings in the coming month, I think, different times. And then we'll see what the council does in terms of adopting those proposals or modifying them or what. The other thing, just so the Planning Commission knows, we are monitoring several bills up at the state legislature right now, some that impact how we operate, and we know there's some coming that impact some land use processes and regulations. So as those get more fleshed out, we'll provide a more regular update and detailed update to the Planning Commission on those. We're just started week 2, so there's not really a lot of land use stuff out there. There's some changes to public noticing that are probably the largest land use bill out there, but we're already doing the things that requires, so we don't think it will really impact the city that much. So that's it.
Thank you. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the minutes from January 11th? Or do we have any discussion on that?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Tuttle.
I'll second.
And a second from Commissioner Burrows. Do we have any discussion to the motion? Not seeing any. We'll go ahead and vote. Commissioner Lee.
Abstain, I was absent.
Commissioner Paredes.
I'll vote yes.
And Commissioner De Oliveira appears to be absent at the moment. Commissioner Scheer.
Yes.
Commissioner Burrows.
Yes.
Commissioner Gent.
I'll abstain because I was absent.
Thank you. Commissioner Berry.
Yes.
And Commissioner Tuttle.
Yes.
So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yes votes, 2 abstentions, and 1 absence. Oh, and I forgot, the chair, the vice chair will vote yes too, so that's 6 yeses. And for the next item is our Planning Commission discussion. I have a couple things that I wanted to bring up, but I will let everyone else jump in first if anyone has anything. Well, first off, I just wanted to thank the planning staff for the great retreat. And we talked about a lot of ideas that I think would be really great for streamlining meetings. So I look forward to seeing suggestions from staff on how to implement that. And the one thing that I wanted to bring up is now my mind is drawing a blank. Exactly, yeah. The thing I wanted to bring up was transfer of development rights, and I would like to see a presentation sometime in the future about where we currently stand on that, and kind of give all of the commissioners a better idea of how that might work. So yeah, you can pull me aside afterwards if you have any specific questions.
No, I think we can find a time to put
Okay.
together a training or see what's out there that
Sounds good.
can do.
Well, with that, we will go ahead and move on to the presentation from the Redevelopment Agency.
Great. Thank you very much for having us. We are excited to be here tonight to share some information with you about the Salt Lake City Redevelopment Agency. Before I get started, I'm Kara Lindsley. I'm the Deputy Director, and this is Ashley Ogden, who's a Senior Project Manager and Team Leader for our staff at the RDA. Let's see. I'm going to switch to the next slide. We thought we'd start out by just explaining our structure for those of you who don't know. The RDA is a department of Salt Lake City, but our structure is a little different from other departments. We have an executive director, and that is a role that the Salt Lake City mayor serves in, and we have a board of directors, and that's a role that Salt Lake City Council serves in. Our board of directors holds monthly meetings that are separate from the weekly city council meetings to discuss RDA business in our individual meetings. Oh, I was also going to mention, this slide also shows that we have two other bodies that help guide the work that we do. One is the Redevelopment Advisory Committee, which I know Commissioner Scheer is familiar with because she, I think, was the chair when I started with the RDA. So that's what we refer to as the RAC, and that is a group of community members who have expertise in a variety of topics. And they advise RDA staff on projects and policy creation, and they also serve as advisors to the RDA board and forward recommendations for actions that the RDA board will have to take. We also have a finance committee which advises us on financial on opportunities for the RDA to financially participate in projects. So we can do that through loans, tax increment reimbursements, and we'll get into some of those tools further into the presentation. But we meet with Finance Committee separately. It consists of a couple members from our RAC and then from some departments of Salt Lake City. And we review applications for financial participation, and then they forward a recommendation to the RDA board for approval or non-approval. Oh, I was like, why didn't it change? Our mission is to invest in Salt Lake City's neighborhoods and business districts to improve livability, spark economic growth, and foster authentic communities. Sorry I'm reading this slide, but I wanted to deliver the mission exactly as we wrote it. We serve as a catalyst for strategic development projects that enhance the city's housing opportunities, commercial vitality, public spaces, and environmental sustainability. We also have established 3 core values that guide our work. That's economic opportunity, equity, inclusion, and neighborhood vibrancy. And just to elaborate a little more on what we're striving for with these values, by economic opportunity, we mean that we invest in the long-term prosperity and growth of our local economy. By equity and inclusion, we mean that we prioritize people-focused projects and programs that encourage everyone to participate in and benefit from development decisions that shape their communities. And then when we try to foster neighborhood vibrancy, we do that by cultivating distinct and livable built environments that are contextually sensitive, resilient, connected, and sustainable. The RDA's work is guided by Utah Code Title 17C, which is the Community Reinvestment Agencies Act. This is the code that authorizes the RDA to create project areas in Salt Lake City. So these have various names based on when they were established. They can be urban renewal areas, economic development areas, community reinvestment areas. But those are all under the broader category of RDA project areas. So when we develop new project areas, we develop a project area plan that's adopted by the city council and establishes the redevelopment objectives for that area. And then 17C allows us to collect a portion of property tax revenue within that area, which is also known as tax increment, to carry out the objectives that are established in the plan. So this next slide shows a map of our project areas. And just for some orientation, the wavy line through the middle of the map is I-15. So you can see in light blue, just to the west of I-15, we have the North Temple project area. The orange on the west side of I-15 is our 9-line project area. And then we have several project areas on the east side of I-15 that include the Granary District, Depot District, Central Business District, State Street. And then we have a few others that are shown here that have expired, but we continue to show them on the map because we have ongoing projects there that haven't quite been wrapped up. And then, let's see. This next slide illustrates what we mean by tax increment. So when a project area is created, we establish a base year. That is the year that serves as a baseline for the property tax revenue that was being collected in the area before the project area was created. Over the term of the project area, which is usually 20 or 25 years, the RDA is authorized to collect a portion of the tax revenue that's above that baseline. And the portion of it is something that's negotiated with each of our taxing entities to determine what percentage we're allowed to collect of that tax increment. At the end of the term, all of the property or tax revenue that's being collected in the project area then goes back to the taxing entities the way it was before the project area was established. I wanted to mention one other thing here. 17C defines the eligible uses for agency funds, but we are required to set aside 10% of all tax increment from project areas for affordable housing projects. So this next slide shows that there's different uses that are allowed depending on what they are, where we're allowed to use them. Within RDA project areas, we can use our agency funds for redevelopment activities that help us meet our objectives. So that often includes acquisition and disposition of property, public improvements or infrastructure projects, and gap financing. Then citywide, 17C authorizes us to use funds on affordable housing anywhere within Salt Lake City boundaries. And I'll turn it over to Ashley for a bit to talk about how the RDA's work ties in with master plans.
Thank you. So, so Kara just covered what the state statute says that the RDA can do, and the rest of this presentation will show how we apply that direction locally for Salt Lake City. So this slide highlights how the city's goals are also the RDA's goals. Like every other city department, the mayor's our boss, the city council members oversee our budget and the programs and policies that we create. So you'll see in future slides, our projects are pretty diverse and require us to work with many different city divisions like planning, engineering, transportation, parks and public lands, housing stability, and we rely on those partners to set our direction through the city's master plans. RDA staff then works to implement those master plans either by incentivizing developers to reach for a higher bar or initiating development projects ourselves or a combination of both. So this slide specifically shows how that relationship works between the RDA and the planning division for land use plans and regulations. So as you're all aware, planning leads the city's land use master planning efforts, which involve extensive community engagement and result in a document that's then adopted by the city council. So once that master plan's in place, planning may initiate large-scale rezones to accommodate the recommendations of the master plan, or the private development community may request rezones on a case-by-case basis. And as long as you all concur and the city council concur that they support the master plan, they may be approved. So the majority of projects that the planning division reviews every day don't involve the RDA at all, but if they do involve RDA investment, we're able to use our participation to leverage an even deeper level of community benefit within the project. So I'll give you a quick example of how this could work for an RDA-owned property, but I have to provide a disclaimer. This is all hypothetical, and plans for this site are still to be determined. But in 2014, the city adopted the West Side Master Plan, which includes the Poplar Grove and Glendale neighborhoods, and identifies intersections where the city should encourage more mixed-use nodes that include both housing and commercial areas. So one of the RDA's newest project areas, the 9-Line project area, falls within the West Side planning area, and the RDA, we recently acquired property at the 900 West and 400 South intersection, which the plan envisions as a community node. I'm not sure about the zoning history, but it is zoned RMU 35, so I assume this intersection was rezoned after adoption of the plan to accommodate it. But the RDA has plans to use our property to catalyze the development of this intersection. And one way we could do that is by advertising the opportunity to partner with the RDA to develop the site and releasing a request for development proposals, which we often refer to as an RFP. So through this process, the RDA could select a proposal that supports the intent of the West Side Master Plan, and we could use the land value or other funding programs that we have to incentivize the inclusion of things like affordable, family-sized housing, affordable commercial space for locally owned businesses, a daycare. We would require at minimum through our sustainability policy that the project be all electric. Basically any city priority that we can fit into the project and have it remain financially feasible, we will push for.
Okay, so I mentioned that there are 3 primary ways that we use agency funds to carry out our mission, and those fall into funding programs that are used for gap financing, funding and implementing public improvement projects, and then property acquisition and disposition. So these next slides, we're going to talk about how those functions work with the RDA and then give some examples of projects that we've done under each of those 3. So the first is our funding programs. We have a general RDA loan program that funds commercial loans right now because we've split off, and I'm going to jump to the 3rd line here, our housing development loan program. And that is what we use exclusively to fund affordable housing. Then going back to the 2nd one, in addition to just the regular loan program, we also have an adaptive reuse loan program just in the Granary District. And that is a unique program because it was established to help adaptively reuse existing buildings and overcome the hurdles of bringing buildings up to code to be able to use them for something other than their original use. And it has a cap of $200,000, and if the goals of the program have been met by the time the project has been constructed, then the loan is forgiven, and so it turns into a grant. And then finally, we also have tax increment reimbursements. And we can talk about any of these if you have questions when we're done. Okay.
Yeah, I could take that.
Yeah.
So right now, it's a really open-ended program. It can fund projects it can fund basically any development project that meets our criteria in the RDA project areas. It can also fund housing outside of the project areas that will deed restrict to be affordable for 80% AMI or below. But as Kara mentioned, we've created these very specific intentional housing funding programs in recent years. And we're actually actively working right now to kind of do the same for commercial. So this general loan program in the near future will become a commercial specific loan program. And it'll be open to commercial, nonprofit, with a focus on local businesses and nonprofits.
Okay, thank you.
Tell me again what the AMI was on that for the affordable housing?
So that program is a little dated, and we're working to update it. That one, you can build housing outside of our project areas at 80% AMI or below. But if you happen to listen to the RDA board meeting about 2 weeks ago, we actually awarded over $6 million in affordable housing funds to, I think we might have funded 7 different projects. But a threshold requirement, all those units that we funded had to be 60% AMI or below, with a lot of other preferences and requirements as well. So we're starting to target deeper levels of affordability with our funds.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just add to that, for the 10% of tax increment that's required to be spent on affordable housing, that requirement in the state code is 80% AMI or below. But like Ashley mentioned, for the affordable housing funding that we release, our threshold right now is 60% and below. So we haven't, yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Kara, can I ask a question? So you mentioned the need for family housing, and this 80% or 60% threshold, is this adjusted for the unit size in some way? For, because it's pretty easy to build a studio at 80% AMI. Is there some adjustment? Is it sort of 2, 3, 4, 5 unit or bedrooms adjusted?
That's a great question. If I'm understanding your question right, no, when we set a threshold, it is, I think that is the threshold for the, is 60% AMI.
I think there might be HUD guidelines we could, you might want to have a look at in terms of like their AMIs for sort of unit, a match of the unit size versus sort of the AMI threshold, because, I worry a little bit we might be incentivizing kind of units that we might end up having too much. And certainly we need some very affordable studios, but we also need some sort of larger size units, even if it's not coming in at 80% of AMI, if it's going to house like, 2 kids and a mom, like that's great, right?
Right.
So I don't know, just something to think about.
Yeah, and I guess it's worth mentioning with the recent notice of funding availability that we released in 2022 and that Ashley just referred to, we established 2 thresholds for that funding, and they were deeply affordable housing, so that was at 40% AMI or below, or family-sized housing. And so, but even with family-sized housing, I believe it had to meet the 60% threshold. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the rents, like I'm sure everyone is aware, like the rents are adjusted by unit size, the rents that you can charge at those AMI levels. But yeah, we don't adjust our requirements based on the size of units that developers are proposing.
Rents are adjusted. Okay, so then I think that is an adjustment for AMI then, if the rents are already being adjusted, right? Because they should be thinking of different, I think.
Well, the way I interpret that is, so then it would be 60% AMI for a one-person family if we're looking at a studio, or for a 4-person family if we're looking at a 3-bedroom apartment.
Yeah, Salt Lake County sets those. We just
Okay.
totally refer to the Salt Lake
Okay.
County
All right.
AMI rents and
Okay.
all of that. So
But you still fund housing projects within your districts that are not affordable, right?
We have, but we haven't released any funds for projects that aren't at least mixed income in quite some time.
Okay.
I think we were going to move on.
Oh, yeah, we were.
Yeah, so these are some examples of projects, the first 2 funding programs that are on the previous slide. So that more general open-ended RDA loan program. Some projects that we funded through that is the Bicycle Collective's new building that's going in, I think that's technically Granary. It's on the border of Central 9th and Granary. But we actually, I think we gave them our land for free as well to build the building, and then we're also giving them a loan with pretty favorable terms to actually construct the building. That's in the upper left corner. So, and then the picture below that, does my mouse work? Yeah. So right here, that's the West End project. That's one of the first projects we funded in our 9-line project area, which is relatively new. That was 2 barrel roof warehouse buildings. I don't remember what they used. It might have been like an appliance repair. It was kind of, it was in rough shape whenever it wasn't our property, but developers purchased it, and we were the primary financer. And now I think 2 different buildings. One business is going in each of the buildings. One of them is a local bakery. And then Red Iguana 2 in the bottom middle, that was just through the RDA loan program. I believe that was before me, but I think we helped fund, I think they reused some structures to make that project happen. TF Brewing was an adaptive reuse loan, so that what Kara described eventually turned into a forgivable loan or a grant once they satisfied their requirements. Atmosphere Studios in the upper right, that's a business in the Granary District that did adaptive reuse as well. Then the bottom right was Spy Hop's newer building in Central 9th. That was a new construction, I believe, on RDA property as well. So we helped facilitate that project. And then these are some of the affordable housing projects. Definitely can't fit all of them on this slide, but just a couple we wanted to highlight just to show a diverse mix of different projects. So the bottom left is the Jackson Apartments. That's downtown near the new West Quarter development, actually on the same block, but it's affordable housing for seniors. And it was cool because the seniors I think they were temporarily moved while the building was rehabbed and kind of updated and improved for them, and then they were moved back in afterwards. So that was a cool project to participate in. The top photo, that's existing conditions. You might recognize that building if you're heading up towards the U on 100 South. Actually, this is one of the projects we just funded 2 weeks ago. I think BCG, the developers, are going to turn that into affordable housing and reuse that building, I think most of the building. The middle right is just down the street. That one's the Maya. That was part of the larger, used to be called the Exchange Project, but the Maya and the Avia. And then the bottom right is Diamond Rail. We made a loan to that project. That's over on 535 West, 3rd North. And then 2 weeks ago, we actually, I think, awarded GIVE further funding to kind of build onto that project. So these are just a select few examples of the affordable housing projects we've participated in.
It's always been affordable, hasn't it? It's always been.
Yeah, so that was preserved as affordable housing, and it'll continue to be for seniors. Yeah.
Okay, and then moving on to public improvement projects. These are projects where the RDA has a direct expenditure of increment for a project within a project area. And Ashley will talk about some examples, but some categories of projects that fall into this are studies, plans, and designs, building public parks and trails, or supplementing the funding that other departments bring for building public parks and trails, working on streetscape and pedestrian improvements, and then also installing public art.
Yeah, so this is just a select few of more recent projects we've helped fund. Right now, we just started, some staff in our office started working on the Main Street pedestrianization study, so we're helping to fund that. And I think they're putting out an RFP soon for a consultant to help with the study and develop some conceptual designs. We, I think, provided some funding for the Ballpark Station area plan that also had a WFRC grant that was adopted, I think, last fall. Japantown Design Strategy, that's kind of a cool project because through our participation in the West Quarter project, which is the very large development over pretty close to the Vivint Arena that's going up right now, we negotiated that some of the tax increment from that project will go to support the Japantown community, which is also on that block on 100 South. So we worked with GSBS, and they developed preliminary designs for a new streetscape for Japantown. We partnered with the community on that. We're about to break ground actually any day now. They might have already broke ground on the Marmalade Park. So that's kind of like a pocket park in the interior of the block that has the Marmalade Library on it. Folsom Corridor, City Creek daylighting, we're participating in that. 650 South, the new track station, we were a large facilitator of that. The new streetscapes in Central 9th on 9th South. And then public art, whenever COVID hit, our coworker Corinne had an idea for an awesome project called Art for Hope. And we put out a request for artists and of course, like compensated them to provide some hopeful artwork or inspirational artwork that we put around the city. And some other installations like Pages of Salt on Regent Street. We've also done a mural project. There's a lot of murals throughout the Granary District that were put up through a program that we helped fund.
And then finally, one of our tools that that we really like, because it's a time when we can use property that we own to make sure that the projects that are constructed there include a lot of public benefits that we'd like to see. So the tool is development of RDA-owned property. And so through this, we acquire property. Sometimes we facilitate the environmental remediation, either using tax increment, or we recently applied for an EPA Brownfields grant, cleanup grant, for a property that we acquired. Then we issue development RFQs or RFPs to bring a developer on board with an idea that can move a project forward with public benefits, and then we go through the developer selection and negotiation process before the project starts.
Yeah, and this is, I believe, our last slide, but these are just a couple examples of property dispositions we've done. So Spark is moving forward. We just closed, I think, we sold the land and also closed on some loans that we made to facilitate development of this project at 1490 West North Temple. I think it has a really unique design, has ground floor retail right in front of a track station, and they're aiming to put a daycare in that project, which is really cool. 255 State, less than a block away from here. It's the same developer as Spark. If you might remember, that was a kind of like an open pit for a few years. But now, yeah, we got another developer on board, and that project's nearing completion, but that has a big affordable housing component, a really cool paseo that actually will lead to, I think it's called the Kramer Building. It's like this very random historic building that's still left in the alley behind there that I think will be incorporated into the project. Kara worked on Paper Box Loss, pretty close to the Vivint Arena as well. It was a really unique, I think, challenging infill site. And they're, I think, leasing up those spaces right now. It also has some, that was an early affordable housing project for the RDA. And then we included Macaroni Flats. It's been done for a while. Definitely predates my time at the RDA, but it's a really cool example of, it involved, I believe, a lot of environmental remediation that was done by the RDA. And then we did ultimately give that property to Art Space to rehab, and they worked their magic, and it's a really awesome project. So I think that's it for us, but yeah, if you guys have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
That was super useful. Thanks so much. Quick question about our property taxes. So on a property that is not an RDA district, does our property tax go to the state and then it's reallocated to the cities under some formula, or is it all flow directly into Salt Lake City coffers? I guess I heard some rumor that there's a somewhat indirect relationship between the funds, the taxes we're paying on property, and what comes back to the city. Is that accurate?
I guess I'd be curious to know really what they were talking about. I can tell you the way that our tax increment comes to us. With community reinvestment areas, which are the most current form of project areas for the RDA, we negotiate an interlocal agreement with each taxing entity. So for 9 Line and State Street, we negotiated interlocal agreements with the county and the school district and Salt Lake City. And that's what established the portion of the property tax revenue that those entities collect that can come back directly to the RDA.
So I can add to that a little bit. I think how it functions though is, whenever you pay your property taxes, they actually all go to the county. So they go to Salt Lake County, and then they actually then, I believe, divvy it up and send it back to us.
Yeah, okay, I think that's what I heard. Sorry, I misspoke. It was not the state,
Oh,
it was
okay,
the
not the
county.
state,
Okay,
okay.
so I
Yes.
guess somebody suggested one disadvantage of that is it's a little bit opaque how we set our taxes and what actually comes back to us. So anyway, I don't want to get too deep into the details, but I just wanted to understand a little better. Thank you.
I have a question on future RDA zones. Do you have like a vision document that you have identified certain areas that you are looking at once some expire that you'll then move into, or is that something that's fluid set by the RDA board?
I think that is fluid. Right now, we are very happy that we recently signed our interlocal agreement with the county for State Street, and so we are really excited to focus on 9 Line and State Street project areas. We're also looking at the new tool that's available to us, which is the HTRZs, or Housing and Transit Reinvestment Zones, I think is what it stands for, which is a slightly different tool, but also uses tax increment. So I think that's where we're focusing our attention right now, is on using the tax increment we're receiving to invest in the project areas we've established, and looking at HTRZs to see where those might be established.
I know the answer to this, but one thing you didn't mention for the rest of the commission is the length of time your RDA zones exist that you get your tax increment. I think would be helpful for them to know.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. So most of our, I'd say pre-2016 project areas, the period was 25 years. Now we usually are doing 20-year terms for our project areas. So like I mentioned, State Street and 9 Line are the most recently created project areas, and those both have 20-year terms.
In the process of you selecting which projects you do, is it usually the developer / business owner reaching out to you and applying, or do you go out and actively find someone that you might be able to collaborate with on a project?
I think it's both. We recently shifted to a competitive process for affordable housing funding, so that is strictly an application process, and it happens once per year, and that's our notice of funding availability. I think when we roll out the new commercial program that Ashley was referring to, I don't know if we'll be identifying partners that would be able to do projects that we'd like to see, but we'll definitely be marketing the program and trying to encourage participation in that program for business owners and property owners.
We are held to the same procurement rules and standards as all the other city departments. So like when we put out property, it's a competitive process, like very strict steps you need to take to make sure that it's a fair competitive process.
When you say competitive, I'm not sure I understand that.
Yeah, so I can,
Two developers compete against each other to develop the same piece of property.
yeah, so if I guess just hypothetically, if there's an RDA property we're putting out, and we're saying, we're opening up for anyone to submit proposals to us, and we'll have like certain preferences or requirements for the site, what we want to see. We typically set up like a selection committee. We'll do like an interview process, or we'll set up a process that everyone who responded will go through the same process, and we'll have like a scoring. So yeah, it is competitive, and the difference is, it's like applications to college. Like if you have a rolling admissions process, they just accept them at any time. We like to have competitive processes, especially with affordable housing, because those dollars are in such demand that we want to see all the proposals at once, so we can judge them all against each other and make sure we're using our money in the most effective way.
Maybe I'll just add one thing to that. So one example that Ashley mentioned is if we own a piece of property, and that you mentioned, if we own a piece of property, we'll release a request for proposals on that one piece of property, and then we will judge those proposals. For the notice of funding availability, we announced that the funding is available for affordable housing, and this year we received 11 applications for that funding. for all different properties, because they were properties that developers had control of, and they would apply for the funding and compete that way.
What if a developer is not located in Utah?
They don't,
How do they get notice?
yeah, go ahead.
Well, so I didn't hear the last part of the question. How do they get what?
Well, like, for example, I know of a nonprofit called Mercy Housing that's based in Denver. They're looking to develop some affordable housing in Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
And they work primarily with the Catholic Church and have developed on mostly Catholic property. But I'm just wondering if they wanted to compete for one of the projects that you own, how would they get notice if they're in Denver?
So we don't directly like notice individual developers. Typically, we'll post them on our website, a bunch of like Utah Public Notice websites. And I think those development firms, they kind of know that's pretty standard. I think they're always keeping their eyes out for opportunities like that. So I think that, they just know how to seek out those opportunities. But we definitely spread them around and advertise the opportunities anywhere we can, like trade publications, whatever.
Looks like we don't have any more questions or discussions, so thank you very much for the great presentation.
Well, thank
Thanks
you
for
so
having
much.
us.
Yeah, thank you for letting us take up some of your meeting and letting us share about the RDA. Have a great night.
We will move on to item number 1, which is the Citizens Bar conditional use at approximately 33 South, 300 East.
Okay. Thank you, Commission. My name's Andy Holka. I'm a new planner, so just want to quickly introduce myself. What we're reviewing tonight is a bar establishment, a new bar called Citizens 33 South, 300 East. To get you oriented to the site, I have an aerial view with the site outlined in red. This is on 30s, just south of South Temple, near the Cathedral of the Madeleine. It's in the RMU, Residential Mixed Use Zone, and part of the Central Community Master Plan. Some of the adjacent uses, all of the directly adjacent properties are in the same zone, the Residential Mixed Use Zone. There are condominiums and apartments to the north and east, vacant commercial property to the south, and then across the street is mostly surface parking. So to give you an overview of the project we're looking at tonight, this is just a rendering on the image. The building's currently under construction. The bar will be located in the ground floor of the Lotus Republic Apartments. That apartment building did not come to the Planning Commission for review. It's a permitted use in the mixed use zone, so it was approved as a permitted use by building permit. The bar area is fairly small, 1,120 square feet. Proposed hours of operation, 11 a.m. to 1 a.m. daily. Based on the size of the commercial space, only 2 parking stalls are required. Those are being provided in the garage. And then their floor plan shows 30 indoor seats and 10 outdoor seats for a total of 40. So tonight, we're recommending approval with one condition, which I'll get to. Have just a couple quick pictures again. So the one on the left is from last month, as you can see. Still some construction equipment, but it is getting close, nearing completion. And then I've got the floor plan kind of highlighted just to give you a sense of what else is on that level. For the most part, it's adjacent to the structured parking. There's also a small pool equipment area. The amenity space for the apartment is directly above this proposed bar. So what we looked at, standards of review, we reviewed the zoning standards, conditional use standards, alcohol-related establishment standards, and the relevant master plans. Full reviews in your staff report. I won't go over that. I guess worth noting, as I said before, the building's already been approved. No modifications to the building or the structure are proposed with this application, so it's just the use that we're looking to approve. We reviewed the master plans. Generally speaking, master plans encourage small local businesses, services that are accessible by foot to our local residents, and particularly in this area close to downtown, bars, restaurants, those sorts of gathering places are anticipated and expected. So based on that, we found that the request meets the standards, complies with the master plans. We are recommending approval with one condition, that the applicant record a copy of the approved security and operations plan with the city recorder's office as required for alcohol uses. Generally speaking, the security and operations plan is our method of addressing those potential negative impacts. So it includes a plan for things like trash cleanup, noise, other complaints, graffiti removal, smoking. So those are the typical potential negative impacts of this type of a use. And that's why we're recommending that as our condition. So that's all I have today. The applicant is here. They don't have a separate presentation, but I think we're both able to answer
Okay.
questions as needed.
Would the applicant like to come forward? Go ahead and state your name for the record.
Allie Platt.
And go ahead and let us know if there's any, since you don't have a formal presentation, you can still speak to the...
Yeah, I mean, if you guys have any questions or concerns, I'm happy to address them, but otherwise we're kind of trying to do more of a higher end. We kept the patio like really low on furniture so that it's kind of more intimate and you don't get, you know, a bunch of people trying to cram out onto a patio where residential's nearby. So we kept seating outside pretty minimal. It's really small plates, kind of a nicer, I don't want to say bougie because that's not the best word, but you know, a kind of just a hip, come after work, get a drink spot, not a party type bar for sure. So.
Do we have any questions from the commissioners?
I have a good question for staff. Are there similar type of restaurants in hotels or condominiums in the area as well, or is this the first one in that area?
I don't know if there's any directly on this section of the block. I know there's Twilight is another bar that's I think maybe about 2 or 3 blocks from this location. So there are others within about a half mile, but not necessarily directly right there.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a quick question. And forgive my ignorance on this, but who gives the final approval on the safety report, the plan that needs to be recorded?
Those go to the police department.
That's
for
what
review.
that's what I was hoping and imagined. Okay, thanks.
Well, if there are no other questions, we'll go ahead and open the public comment. Do we have anyone from the community council that would like to speak? Do we have anyone from the public that would like to speak? Do we have any emails? Well, then we will go ahead and close the public comment period and bring it back to the commission for discussion or a motion.
I'll make a motion. Based on the information presented and discussion, or lack thereof, I move that the commission approve this application with the condition listed in the staff report.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Gent and a second from Commissioner Scheer. Do we have any discussion to the motion? Well, seeing none, we will go ahead and vote. Commissioner Gale,
Yes.
Commissioner Berry,
Yes.
Commissioner Burrows,
Yes.
Commissioner De Oliveira,
Yes.
Commissioner Lee,
Yes.
Commissioner Paredes,
I'll vote yes.
Commissioner Scheer,
Yes.
Commissioner Gent,
Yes.
Commissioner Tuttle,
Yes.
and the Vice Chair will vote yes. That passes unanimously. Good luck with your
Thank you.
bar.
Thank you so much.
Oops. That brings us to the next item, number 2, the twin home plan development at approximately 2148 South, 2060 East. Do we have
Good evening, Commissioners. Vice Chair Christensen. Am I speaking close enough into the microphone? Okay. This is a request for and I have the applicant here with me, Jordan Atkin, just for convenience. So this is a request to reconfigure a property at approximately 2148 South, 2060 East. It's a planned development and preliminary plat to convert a duplex into a twin home. Duplex meaning 2 units on a single lot that are usually for rent, to a twin home where it's 2 separate units that are divided by a party wall. Things get a little bit complicated here because of the layout of the property, and I'll show that when we get to that point. So yeah, like I said, typical lot split is not possible with the configurations, and staff is recommending approval with conditions. Thank you. If you wanted to see the first page, there's the first page as well. On to the next page. So just a quick overview there. The proposal would include 2 lots and a common area, include a new HOA for the common area run by the 2 properties. There's no proposed site development with this proposal. The zoning district is SR1, which permits this size of plan development on the lot size of the lot, and it's within the Sugar House master plan area. Here is a location map. This is the Mountain America Credit Union that was recently finished at 2070. There's 21st and 21st. This is a little island of duplexes in the SR1 district within generally lower density neighborhoods, R1 12,000, R1 7,000. Here's just a outline of the lot configuration. These lines are not the legal lines. This is just me drawing on a map. So there will be 2 lots, lot 1 and lot 2, and the common area that would share the garage, the driveway, the yard, and they would share responsibility for maintenance and use of that area. And a photo of the house. This is the building in question. The shared garage. I believe this will also be divvied out, and I'll let the applicant speak to the details on who gets what garage. And there is a cutout of the plat. You can see there's lot 1 and lot 2, and the shared common area is the remainder of the property. And the reason they need to do this, or that this proposal's coming to you like this, is you can see the garage kind of sits separate from the duplex, and at the time, they shared this driveway and the carport, and dividing the property in half down the middle of the house or the building would put the entry on one lot, the driveway and carport on another. By doing this, it's difficult to even do that lot split through a by right process, but B, there's just equal access to all the amenities on the lot. And so staff is recommending a few conditions, specifically that they submit a building permit for the party wall conversion. For this type of improvement, there are additional building and fire codes for this line in between the house, and the applicant is aware of that, and the building services is also aware of this proposal. Then also recording that final plat before occupancy, and then staff just asks you delegate standard C5 of the plan development standards to staff, so that to expedite the process. And I'm happy to answer any questions at this point.
We'll go ahead and hold
All right, go to the
questions
applicant.
until
I
after the
apologize.
applicant. So, yes.
My name is Jordan Atkin with TAG SLC. I don't have a formal presentation. We have actually tried to do this type of conversion on several properties over the last handful of years and ran into all sorts of complications. So we finally found one where a side-by-side unit would allow us. We mostly ran into our challenges with the condo platting of existing units. It became fairly cost prohibitive. So just like a little pet project to create a little more of owner-occupied units in Eastside Salt Lake. We don't anticipate any changes other than what's to the site or building, other than what's required to meet the life safety standards.
Thanks. Any questions from commissioners?
I guess I have a question, and I do remember Jordan from other projects that were also quite unique, and I think you were successful at the ones that I remember anyway. So right now they're sharing a wall, these two units, and that'll continue. That'll be the same in the project that you're working on. Yes.
Yeah, we essentially just need to add some additional sheetrock and fire caulking between those units, but it'll stay the same. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners? Seeing none, we will open this up for public comment. Anyone present from the community council? Any members of the public wishing to comment? We will go ahead and, any emails? We will go ahead and close the public comment and bring it back to the commission for discussion or a motion.
Oh, I'm so glad. I was at your retreat, and I know there was a discussion of hyperlinks, so I tried to. Good.
Nope, sorry. I'm ready to make a motion to approve this. If anybody, does that sound like a fun thing? Yeah.
Second the motion.
Well, I got to make it, don't I? Hold on. Hold on. Based on the information presented and discussion, I move that the commission approve the following applications associated with this proposal. Preliminary subdivision and planned development with the conditions listed in the staff report.
Gee, now that I've actually heard it, I'm not sure. I'll second the motion.
We have.
Of order, Mr. Chair, I think that this needs to include the PLN's PCN numbers. No? Because
Nope.
we didn't announce it in the agenda either. I mean, it's in the agenda, but the chair didn't announce it.
As long as we know what item on the agenda we're talking about,
Okay.
it's implied what the
Okay.
Thank
number
you.
is.
Well, then we have a motion from Commissioner Burrows, and a second from Commissioner Tuttle. We'll go ahead and take a vote. Commissioner Lee,
Yes.
Commissioner De Oliveira,
Yes.
Commissioner Burrows,
Yes.
Commissioner Berry,
Yes.
Commissioner Gale,
Yes.
Commissioner Tuttle,
Yes.
Commissioner Gent,
Yes.
Commissioner Shear,
Yes.
Commissioner Paredes,
I will vote yes.
and the vice chair will vote yes. And that is another unanimous decision.
Thank you.
No, I will vote yes. Yeah. Oh.
Thanks for keeping an eye on us, though. We will move on to item number 3, which is plan development preliminary subdivision plat and design review for Art West at approximately 86 South, 900 West.
Why is it doing this? Sorry, it wants me to accept a license. It wants me to accept the license. Do I do that? That's going to close me.
Can you use the PDF?
That's not mine. That's theirs.
Yeah.
Okay.
And make sure you push that.
Thank you. Do I have to activate that? Where it says activate?
Yeah, I'll
Do it.
Yeah.
No.
We did that. Skip for now.
Okay.
Oh, you should be able, can you just open it?
Yeah.
You?
Okay.
And then push a button.
Okay, so sorry. It liked the other planners' PDFs. It did not like my PowerPoint. Okay. This is the Art West Plan Development Preliminary Subdivision Plat and Design Review Applications. This is the location here it's on the corner of 100 South and 900 West. It's about a half mile from North Temple, which is where the Trax line is. It's just a little bit north of I-80 and I-15 to the east. The project request is a townhome development for 30 single-family attached units. 29 of the units will be 2-bedroom units, and 1 will be a 3-bedroom unit. They are asking for preliminary subdivision plat approval for the separation of those single-family units. The overall proposal is for 5 buildings, as you can see on the site plan to the right. 2 of the buildings, the first one that fronts, you can't see my cursor, but Building A fronts on 100 South, and Building B fronts along 900 West. The 3 other buildings will be within the interior of the subject property, and 14 of the units, there is 14 units within those 3 buildings, buildings C, D, and E. Those do not have frontage, and therefore they're asking for the plan development approval on that. The building height proposed for all 5 buildings is below 39 feet. As you can see, the breakdown of the height for building A, B, C, D, and E. The proposal is in the Transit Station Area Urban Neighborhood Station Transition Zoning District. They did not receive 125 points or more to have this administratively approved. Therefore, they're coming to you for design review approval. In addition, the applicant is asking for zoning modifications to 3 design standards, and that also goes through the design review process. Those 3 zoning modifications: 1, increase allowance for stucco on building B from 10 to 22%. The second one is a reduction of the ground floor use requirements from 10 feet to 8 foot 7 inches for building A, and to 9 feet 7 inches for building B. The third one is a reduction of the ground floor glass requirement from 45% to 44.7%. This is a very small percentage. This is for building A, and that is for the glass for the windows. This is already a reduction from the ordinance allowance for residential buildings from 60% required in the TSA zone down to the 44%. Based on the information and findings listed in this report, staff recommends the Planning Commission approve all 3 applications for this project. This is a rendering. I'm going to go through this really quickly because the applicant does have a full presentation that's pretty thorough. These are site pictures. The property did have a building on it, an out-of-business building, and a single-family home. They have been demolished, as you can see. The property is cleared right now, so it's this corner here. There is a deli to the north that's existing and is named after me. Thank you. And then there's an existing building that's just to the west of it that is standing as shown. And again, we are asking the Planning Commission to approve all 3 applications. Go ahead. Give me just a moment to switch over to you.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Roll.
Do you want to do it?
Sure.
Okay.
Hey, guys.
State your names for the record.
Sure, I'm Mike Smith with Developed. I'm here with Jared Hall with Developed as well. We're very excited about this project and delighted to share it with you. It's much of this was, let's see the best way to, I guess, scroll or hold on. Let me go into presentation mode.
You're going to have to do it on this computer, sorry, if you're switching it.
That's okay. I can work with this. So the project is, as was stated, it's 900 West, 100 South. It's half a block from the Folsom Trail and 2 blocks from the North Temple Tracks line. It's surrounded on 3 of its sides by single-story buildings, and then on the south side with that gorgeous converted chapel owned by the Arts Alliance. We certainly enjoy that juxtaposition. It's covered 30 units. We got a space for each unit, 1 parking spot as required. Some of the modifications that we want approval for are, 1, the lots without frontage. All of the street-facing units, we have, let's see, yeah, so they're facing the street, obviously, about half of the units, and then inside, we can achieve that while trying to get the density requirements that the master plan wants and to make the project feasible. That's our first request. And then the second modification is that stucco increase, the majority of which this rendering's from the middle of the street, looking at the building. You can't see that stucco. That's in those rooftop deck, the rooftop deck stairs. So it's set far enough back that it effectively is not the front elevation, even though it technically is when we're drawing elevations for the city. So we still think we're achieving the intent of those requirements with the project. The other modification is a small reduction in the ground floor use that requires 10 feet. We have this in 2 units. On one of them, we've got 8'7". It's insignificant. It doesn't, any increase wouldn't change the usage of that entry space. And same with the modification on unit D, where we've got, that's really close. We're at 9'7". and we're still getting a bedroom unit in that. But that request, like for us to get a 20-foot parking, a garage to fit a car effectively, that just didn't quite have enough space there to make that work at the 10 feet. And then we have the glass as discussed, the 44.7 to with the requirement of 45%. So we've got these on our units on typical sizing, and it's minor. I think in the future I'll call 44.7 45, but so there's that. And then we're really actually quite happy with how this project engages the street with the human scale brick and those front entries. We think it's providing a kind of nice moment for the community. And there we are. Do we have any questions?
Any questions from commissioners for staff or the applicant?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
If you can scroll back to the picture where you said the stucco isn't visible, is it essentially we're looking at like, was it that one? Yeah. So if you look above the window framing, there's that like wall that's kind of white colored. Is it back in that crevice where you're talking about that would be the increased stucco? Or is it completely, we can't tell at all?
You can't really see in this image because, I guess.
So the white and blue and pink are stucco.
Right,
When you
right.
calculate those are under the percentage.
Can you
Maybe
please
scroll.
speak into the microphone?
Yeah, so the white, blue, and pink are stucco, but those are under the percentage. But then when you look at this image, all that stuff that's set back on the roof.
Set back
up above,
on top, right?
What
Yeah.
puts us over.
This image helps.
Okay,
show
that's great. That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure that I was looking at it correctly.
I have a question. I don't know how my fellow commissioners feel. I mean, I do like the main idea of having something like this in that area. Do the windows have some kind of, I guess, angled look to them? Is that kind of like a modern type of a look? Is that what you guys are going for?
The windows themselves aren't angled. There's just some.
I guess
frame.
Right.
Articulation.
The ornamentation of the I guess the window. Does it kind of fit with the rest of the neighboring structures? If there are some structures similar to this or houses. I don't know if there's houses around that. But is that something that kind of fits with the rest of the area around?
Boy, this is a tricky neighborhood to this surrounding area to make fit into a certain kind of architectural styling, because there's car garages around, there's these older buildings, and so a lot of the development that's happening here is inventing a look for the area. But yeah, the angles themselves aren't responding to necessarily something that's in the area. Just a feature that's specific to the project.
Okay, thank you.
So on the stair towers, what's the roof material on like the left side of that image? Over there, yeah.
Yeah.
What's that roofing that you have? Is that going to be a stucco wall that's angled, or is that some sort of roofing
Yeah,
material?
it'll be a gray TPO.
Okay.
Okay, so I want to discuss the objectives in the staff report that were not met, that were not satisfied, meaning the common space and open space requirements. So when I go out to the site, the thing that dominates it for me are all those power lines. Are you going to bury them, or are you going to keep them up? What are you doing with them? Because they seem to be a fairly significant obstacle in doing any kind of landscaping on the parking strip. And the staff report refers that you'll keep the existing, there's one tree, right? And it's pretty pitiful looking. So because of all those power lines, it's virtually impossible to add any type of meaningful landscaping in the parking strips. So that leaves us with the interior, and I haven't really seen a realistic landscaping plan for the interior of those buildings, other than the staff report indicates that all paved areas will be landscaped, but I don't know what that means. So if you're in buildings C, D, and E, which is part of the plan development because they don't have street frontage, it looks pretty abysmal to be in there. It's all pavement. So I'd like to hear from you what your plan is to at least make that somewhat hospitable and green it up in a bit, because all of the landscaping you show on that in the parking strip I feel is pretty impossible due to the like excessive amount of power lines on this corner.
That applicant or staff?
Applicant.
So the landscape we're showing in the park strips is possible. Like, yes, on that south side, those power lines are very dominant, and it's been a chore working with Rocky Mountain Power and Salt Lake City Fire to get buildings here. But all of that landscape is designed to not grow super tall. So those trees aren't growing 70 feet tall, they're growing 20 feet tall, so they stay below all those power lines. That landscape is happening. And then in between those buildings, it's 10 feet wide, and we have a 5-foot sidewalk and then 2.5 feet of small planter space between each of the units. So there is a little bit of landscape in between the buildings.
In planters?
Yeah.
Not in the actual like common areas, like, so those can be not planted.
So,
you know,
I mean, it's a common area between the buildings, if that's what you're asking.
yeah, I want to know what the experience is if you're living in building C, D, and E. Like, what's going to be your exposure to any type of non-asphalt exterior, because that's pretty much all I see on these plans. And so putting landscaping in planters isn't long term, isn't something that you would then be, you know, 1 year you just don't plant them and then it just becomes barren again. So having that objective not satisfied is something that, you know, when I think about how the things that I look at is that greenery. You know, the urban forester has specifically stated the mayor's objective is not to plant small trees. She wants very large trees. So I don't know that you're meeting like urban forestry objectives for parking strips plantings due to the constraints of those power lines. So I get that. But I think then you need to make up for some of that experience in this internal part. If we're not having street frontage for these 3 buildings, we need to have something other than a planter that might have some flowers in it, and then asphalt. So from your perspective, what are the things that you could do to enhance that, to help satisfy that objective?
One of the things we love about the way Salt Lake City looks at most downtown zones is these amenities are living downtown. So we are a half block from the brand new Folsom Trail, which will have a new trail and all this landscaping, that the landscape isn't right outside your front door, but it is not very far away, and it helps create this sense of community by getting more people using those public things that, as a city, we've spent a lot of money to create. So that's more of what we look at as far as some of these landscape things that are kind of part of the master plan, is getting people using the stuff that the city is providing.
And while this doesn't satisfy some of the concerns being addressed in terms of outdoor experience, each of these units do have a private rooftop deck. So while that's not related to planting like at the ground floor level or necessarily up on the rooftop, but there still is, this project does offer at least a kind of a unique, pleasant outdoor experience in a rooftop.
And then what is your relationship going to be with the alleyway? I mean, I'm going to say that alley looks to be in really good shape compared to some we've seen, right? But it also looks like the sides of your buildings, D and E and B, just about right up to the property line. Are you going to be putting a fence, or what's your treatment in the relationship to the project to the alleyway?
Yeah, there will be we're putting a new fence on the north side of the alley, and then we will have fencing as well on the other side, and small, I guess, or will we on that? Yeah, in that small section in front of the transformers. Actually, maybe we wouldn't have it there. So yeah, the fence is the brand new fencing all along the north side of the alley.
And so, because just the graphic I'm looking at doesn't give this to me, but how much, what is the distance between the edge of the building to then your property line where you'll put the fence in? Just so I get an idea of the width of that.
So on our side of the alley, it's about a foot, and there won't be a fence there, it will just be the buildings. And then we've been working in conjunction with the property owners on the north, because that fence is old and kind of broken, and we're replacing that side with a new fence. So, and then repaving the alley for the length of our project.
Okay, so on your north side, it's just the building, because then there's a foot and then there's the alley.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Commissioner Barry, you said there's something in the report where it's not meeting. Can you point that out for me, just because I am not aware where that is?
One moment, please.
Or anyone that knows?
It is on page 59 of the findings. Whether it's specifically point A, open space and natural lands, preserving, protecting, or creating open space and natural lands. And then the finding for that is objective, not satisfied.
Mr. Chair, can I think along that, what you're getting at, so with the objectives, only one of those list of objectives has to be met to satisfy that. But I think what you're talking about is actually standard D, landscaping. There's 4 different things that the Planning Commission can consider in that section, and it deals with mature trees, existing landscaping, or proposed landscaping. And so you might want to look at that standard in light of those comments. I think they're still relevant. I just think that that's a more specific standard.
Thank you. In specific answer to your question of where the not satisfied was found, it was there, but there are relationships to that section of the standards.
And then I have one other question, I think, for probably the applicant, and it's regarding the building entrances. And just to clarify, if there's some sort of a landing that's tucked into that building facade, and the actual entrance is on one of those sidewalls inside, particularly the street-facing buildings.
On the street-facing buildings, the entry is tucked under the building about 5 feet, and it is facing the street on each of the units.
So the door actually is facing the street, or
The door's on the sidewall in that recess.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that,
Right
that I think that's something that needs to be clarified by the Planning Commission. A strict reading of the building entrance requirements in the design standards chapter says that the entrance faces the street. So I think that's something that the commission as a whole should consider and clarify whether you think this meets that standard.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I think that in the case where you're having these individual buildings at the same level as the street, where the entrance is at grade, it may in fact be preferable to have the entrance on the side and have a landing rather than having a door that, when you open it, reveals everything in the living room to anybody passing by. So I know that there's that, strictly speaking, we have that, but in this case, I'm not bothered by this personally.
Yeah, and with that requirement, I'm under the impression a lot of what drives that is this idea of eyes on the street as well. And we think that that orientation of the door as shown improves that eyes on the street, because we already have eyes on the street straight ahead, and when you have something perpendicular to the road, you also have an increased angle of view if you're inside your house to your unit to look out. So I would say my feelings are that if you put it parallel to the street in a project like this, even though it would strictly maybe meet that, it wouldn't do as good of a job as satisfying the intent as if it's perpendicular.
Do we have any more questions from commissioners? Well, we'll go ahead and open up the public comment. Do we have anyone from the community council? Do we have anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this? Any emails? Well, let's bring it back to the commission for discussion and a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion. Based on the information presented in the discussion, I move that the commission approve the following applications associated with this proposal: preliminary subdivision plat, number 2, plan development, number 3, design review.
Second?
We have a motion from Commissioner Scheer and a second from Commissioner Gent. Any discussion to the motion? We'll go ahead and vote then. Commissioner Lee.
Yes.
Commissioner De Oliveira.
Yes.
Commissioner Burrows.
Yes.
Commissioner Barry.
No.
Commissioner Tuttle.
Yes.
Commissioner Gale.
Yes.
Commissioner Gent.
Yes.
Commissioner Scheer.
Yes.
Commissioner Paredes.
I will vote no.
And the vice chair will vote yes. So that gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 yes and 2 no. So you are free to move ahead. Good luck with the project.
Excellent, thank you.
And if we have no further business, well, I wanted to mention that we do have a new commission member that I wanted to recognize, Commissioner Gale. Welcome to the commission.
Thank you.
And I realized later that when I was taking the vote on the approval of the minutes that I did fail to call on you, although you would have abstained anyway.
That's right.
So yes, our vote tally sheet does need to be updated. So with that, we'll go ahead and close.
Thank you.